Our next speaker is Luk Pelkman. Luk is Technical Coordinator of the IEA Bioenergy Technology Collaboration Programme since 2016. He is also manager of the consultancy firm CAPREA Sustainable Solutions. Luk graduated as MSc in Mechanical Engineering in 1994 and worked for VITO, a Belgian research institute from 1996 until 2017 as project manager on the topics of alternative transport fuels and drivetrains, biofuels, bioenergy and biobased economy. Luk will deliver our international address this morning via Zoom. Thanks to the technology, we have this available to us as Luk could not attend in person today due to a busy workload and schedule. The title of Luk's presentation is The Role of Sustainable Bioenergy in the Global Energy Transition. I would like to thank and note the assistance of Eugene Hindrick for securing Luk to present today, and also to Stephen, who's working on our technical side, for bringing in Luk via Zoom and for organising the technology. So I see Luk on screen, so I'd like to hand over to Luk to address you. Thank you.
Hello. Okay. So am I on the screen also? Can you confirm? Okay. So welcome everybody. So good morning, and I'm really glad to be part of this this workshop. And I'd love to come to Ireland at some time again, but it's pretty busy here, so I'll do this through Zoom. This presentation. I'll try to open and share it. So is this working? Okay. All right. So my presentation is about the role of sustainable biomass in the global energy transition. As you heard in the introduction, I'm working for IEA Bioenergy most of my time. Just a background on IEA Bioenergy. So we are a technology collaboration program, which is functioning within a framework created by the IEA. So we do not represent the IEA, although we have quite close links to the IEA. The goal of our network is really to have an international collaboration and information exchange on everything related to bioenergy. So it goes into research, what kind of technologies are under development, what's happening in the real world on demonstrations and markets, and what's the policies also behind it, and what are effective policies. So in the end, our mission is more or less to facilitate the market deployment of sustainable bioenergy systems. And with sustainable, we mean that they are climate positive, environmentally sound, socially acceptable, and also looking at the cost competitiveness. As mentioned, we are a global network, and countries can become a member also of IEA Bioenergy. At the moment, we have 26 members, of which 15 European countries, which also includes Ireland. Also the European Commission, and then outside Europe, you have the USA, Canada, Brazil, India, China, Japan, Korea, Australia, New Zealand, and South Africa. You see them on the list here. So it's really also a global coverage, and quite a lot of number of important countries in the field of bioenergy are member. We have a lot of work which is going on in IEA Bioenergy. We have a work program which is carried out through what we call tasks, or kind of individual networks also on certain themes and special projects. So we try to cover the full value chains from feedstocks to final energy products. And here you see kind of an overview of the different tasks that we have. Tasks are indicated in blue. They all have numbers. And as you see, we start from resources. There's a task really dedicated at looking at biomass supply. We have several tasks which look at different conversion processes, like combustion, but also anaerobic digestion, and then conversion to biofuels, or gasification, liquefaction. Also making the connections to the energy markets and product markets next to it. And we also look at the systems perspective, looking at climate change, sustainability, looking at what's needed to increase deployment and accelerate it. Also looking into the role of bioenergy in the energy system. How does it integrate, and how can it provide flexibility? So this is just a quick overview. Also reminding that Ireland is quite active also in our tasks. So as I noted, they're a member in the task 36 on waste, on the task on biogas, on biofuels, on biorefining, and also sustainability. So that's quite a good interaction. Just take a step back. So what's the reason why we want to pursue this? So we see that sustainable bioenergy really has a unique role in the transition away from fossil energy, which reminded from the energy crisis now is really getting urgent with different factors. So it's available now to phase out fossil fuels, and it's in many forms it's compatible to existing infrastructure, be it as a solid fuel, as liquid biofuels, or as gaseous fuels in the form of biomethane, for instance. It's also versatile, so you can use it in different sectors. It's usable for heat, for power, for transport fuels, or combinations, or you can kind of direct it to what's really needed in the market, which is a very big advantage. Also storable and dispatchable, so complementing other renewables which are more seasonal or intermittent. So that's quite an important role, and it's getting more and more important towards the future. What's coming up also is that bioenergy is really a tool also to remove CO2 from the atmosphere, and really in combination of producing energy. So you have two combined. Other technologies just remove CO2 from the atmosphere, take a lot of energy, but here you also have energy production. So CCS is gaining importance. But next to CCS, also capturing the CO2 and using it for something, using it for carbon-containing products, using it for e-fuels. That's also something which is gaining interest. And the last point I want to mention here also is that what we see in bioenergy, and there's always a big connection with bio-based economy, which has also an important role in the future. So at the moment, we're enabling certain biomass supply chains. We're setting up sustainability governance systems. There's a lot of debate on sustainability and how to deal with it. So that's also something which is going to serve for the bio-based economy. And of course, contribution to climate change mitigation is a very important one. Of course, there's bad bioenergy examples, but there's also many good bioenergy examples, which you also have to emphasize more, I think. But some of the conditions that are important is, of course, that biomass is grown sustainably. If you have a dedicated growth in forestry and agriculture, so it has to come from sustainably managed forests, from sustainable and regenerative agriculture, or it's based on waste and residues. A second point is, well, it is a limited resource in the end, so you have to use it efficiently. So you have to convert it efficiently to energy products. Don't waste too much heat in this. So if it's just electricity production and losing 60% heat, it's also not such a good idea. And often you make it, produce it together with bio-based products, which also have a good role in displacing fossil resources, also have a climate advantage. Important also is to use this bioenergy really in sectors which are heavily reliant on fossil fuels or have really difficulties to displace these fossil fuels. So that's important. And next to that, so on top of the advantages of bioenergy on its own, the CCS and CCU can really add to that. And I included a picture also here of really a difference between the CO2 which is going on in the bioenergy bio-based world, which is really happening in the biosphere, where you have the uptake of CO2, release of CO2, but in at the end it's kind of a balance, where in the contrast fossil fuels you just take carbon from the underground and you emit it to the atmosphere. So that's really a net increase. Just a slide also from IPCC. A little bit of the role of emission reduction on one side and carbon dioxide removal on the other side. So sometimes, yeah, it's kind of easy for companies to say, well, let's just continue what we're doing and capture the CO2 and store it. So actually, if you look at the different terms, what's the real focus at the moment? So at the moment, we are really at the top, at the peak, more or less. So hopefully a little bit over the peak. At the moment, what we really need to do is reduce the fossil CO2 emissions. So get rid of fossil and replace it with other, and also have energy savings. So that's the first thing. The first thing you really need to do. But then to reach a net zero system, which Europe aims for in 2050, and many regions outside also, is that at that time you still have some certain emissions which are very difficult to abate. So we need to counterbalance that with negative emissions. And in the future, it's very likely that we have an overshoot of the temperature. So we really have to have negative emissions. So really take out CO2 from the atmosphere to reduce the temperature again. Now, bioenergy has quite an important role in the first instance to replace fossil energy, but then on the longer term, you also have these negative emissions. And of course, you really have to look also in terms of land carbon that you stay in balance, and there's also quite some uptake also in the land, in the forest and the agriculture. I'd like to refer to some work which has been done by IEA and published last year. You may be familiar with this also. So their net zero by 2050 roadmap. It's kind of an overall, a broad study of the IEA and the different experts that they have to look at how the energy system can transition to a net zero system by 2050. So looking at different technologies, among those also bioenergy, but also solar, hydro, wind, other types of renewables. So here you see the kind of the evolution of total energy supply in their roadmap. What is really really important is to realize that we still haven't gone to a reversing trend yet. So hopefully this year may be a real trigger to do that, but so far up to 2021, 2022, of course you had the COVID impact there, but we still were increasing our fossil fuel consumption. So the next decade, it's really important to reverse this trend, to really get it down, and crucial steps are really needed in this decade. But if you look at the mix in 2050, you see that, well, it's a myriad of options, and bioenergy is one of them, and quite an important one. It represents 18% of total energy supply, so it's not something you can ignore. Also like to point is that there's quite a lot of traditional use of biomass still, and traditional use at the moment. Traditional use of biomass is something like inefficient open fire, so very inefficient use of biomass, which is also high polluting, many in developing countries, and that's something we have to move out and have a much more efficient use of this bioenergy in modern applications. So that's also a switch. Now, just looking at different sectors and what IEA sees the role of bioenergy as in these different sectors. So looking at these three. So industry, if you look at 2020, there's still a very high reliance on fossil fuels, so that needs to go down. There's a big role of electrification, but also if you look at the top, the dark green, biomass is a very important one. And in industry, they see that a trend of 3 times more bioenergy use in industry, so which is also one of the tools for decarbonization there. In transport, so electrification is a very important one, but of course it takes time to change a vehicle fleet, and of course it's not just about cars; it's also about long distance trucks, about aviation and shipping. And in the 2050 scenario from IEA, you have like half of the energy in transport being electricity, mainly for electric cars, but the rest is really fuels, and you try to get the carbon emissions as low as possible. So it's biofuels on the one hand and e-fuels on the longer term, and biofuels is mainly something we can do in the next decades already. And then for buildings, as mentioned, there's quite a lot of traditional use of biomass at the moment, still in developing countries, so we have to move away from that. There's going to be a lot of electrification also in buildings. Well, this electricity is not just for heating habits, but all applications. But also there's quite some role for biomass, mainly for heating systems in rural areas, remote areas, also heating in district heating. So decentralized district heating could be a role there also. So what was estimated was that biomass would represent 15% of industry energy use in 2050, which is mainly producing high temperature heat, which is more difficult with electricity and heat pumps. 16% of transport energy use, so also something not to ignore, and mainly in the long distance sectors. And then 10% of energy use in buildings. Of course, what you see in all the sectors is a growing role for electricity. So in the end, electricity production needs to increase by a factor of 3, more or less, by 2050, which is gigantic. The role of bioenergy there would be like 5%. It seems low, or it sounds low, but this 5% also means that there needs to be a big increase compared to what we have today. And this electricity production will be more in flexible modes to really cover the solar and wind, which is going to be really dominant at that time in that scenario. Also important is negative emissions. So CCS, a lot of these applications will have CCS in 2050. This 1.3 billion tons of CO2, which is captured and stored from bioenergy, almost half of that would be in biofuel production, where you have in several processes, you have CO2 in quite high concentrations as byproduct, like also in biomethane. If you want to go from biogas to biomethane, you have quite a lot of CO2. In ethanol, you have CO2 that you can capture. In gasification processes, you have CO2 that you can capture, so quite important. Also power and heat production, so from taking the exhaust gases and then get CO2 out, and also the rest of it is in industries. Where is this biomass going to come from, and what type of biomass? So I also did an analysis on that. So you see this big block of traditional use of biomass in 2020. I think they were pretty ambitious to say in 2030 this needs to disappear, but this will take much more time, be more gradual. But what you see is that there's going to be a pretty big role in organic waste and residues. So we really need to focus on that. Another is woody biomass from forest and wood residues, but also new forestry plantings, also agroforestry, so growing trees together with agricultural crops. And another one is short rotation lignocellulosic crops. So the role is not so big at the moment, but it's considered that there's quite some potential there, and particularly on marginal lands, unused lands at the moment, also to revive rural communities and some of the soils that they have. If you look at the role of woody biomass, actually the increase is not very big, so it's maybe 50% more, and maybe some of that biomass will come from what was originally traditional use of biomass. So it's not the intention that forests are really going to be big extraction from forests anymore. So that's not where the big increase would be. Going to next, so there's always some discussion of bioenergy. Is that something transitional? Is there really a long term for bioenergy? And we really see in all the scenarios from IEA, from IPCC, from different modeling exercises, they all have an important role for bioenergy, also at the longer term. And this varies between 10 and 30% of the energy supply, but it is important really to keep this global warming below 1.5 or 2 degrees Celsius. There's no silver bullet, so every scenario really comes out with, well, you have to do all kinds of things. So there's nothing really that you can leave behind. So you need a mix of options, starting with energy conservation, with efficiency measures, with renewables, including bioenergy, and also carbon dioxide removal options. And the role of bioenergy, so we do have to realize that things are shifting. So it's not a very stationary thing. So it's really shifting to sectors where you have which are difficult to abate or to move away from fossil fuels or from liquid fuels. And thinking of long distance transport, thinking of industry heat at high temperature. And also the association with CCS to counteract residual greenhouse gas emissions is really important also. What's always important to keep in mind is that this use of biomass for energy needs to be balanced with food production, with production of bio-based products. And that's also a trend more and more. Also this residue part, which I mentioned, is to co-produce bioenergy in other bioproducts, or the cascading use. And we also have to keep in mind that there are really limits to biomass and land availability. So IEA has estimated around 100 exajoules would be available, which is something a bit lower than 20% of the energy supply. That was rather conservative, but still ambitious and conservative, if I can say it like that. But there are limits to it, and we have to use it efficiently. And rapid expansions are always a bit dangerous in terms of trade-offs, that you have you lose some on like biodiversity side or things like that. But of course, this rapid expansion issues and trade-offs is not unique for bioenergy. You also have that in other fields as well. Just coming to conclusions. So I've been quite fast because my time is limited. So sustainable bioenergy is really an essential element in all the scenarios that are considered. And the IEA scenario, it's 18%. Something to really keep in mind is that it goes hand in hand with the bio-based economy, or it's just a big part of the bio-based economy. There's certainly no conflict with bio-based economy. Biofuels can play an important role in the transport sector. It's really a complement to energy efficiency measure and electrification. It's not a competition. And it has a special role in aviation, shipping, and other long-haul transport. And there's also growth in electricity. There's growth in industry, which is anticipated. The combination with CCS is very important to get to carbon extraction from the atmosphere. That's actually the only renewable technology which is doing that. But we have to keep in mind that we realize that bioenergy has a lot of opportunity and potential, but the progress at the moment is slower than needed. So there's actually action needed to expand deployment of existing technologies, for instance, biogas and biomethane. It's really worthwhile in considering how to expand that. Commercializing new technologies like advanced biofuels, they've been lacking quite a lot in the past 10 years, and probably now it's going to make a difference, but we have to keep an eye on that. It all starts from biomass availability, of course, so we need to develop sustainable supply chains, and together with that, sustainability governance systems, so that we don't have negative side effects. And we also need to build capacity, so people get more trained in this, and regulatory capacity, and also in a much wider range of countries and regions. And that's also from IEA Bioenergy side a quite important role for us. All right, this is my last slide. So I thank you for your attention, and hope it's clear. And if there are questions, I don't know if there's much time at the moment, but you're always welcome to send me an email or get in touch. Okay. I'll stop sharing.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much. Thanks very much to Luke for your presentation this morning, and certainly have set out the opportunity from an international context